Hey everyone, hello, welcome to this webinar. Thanks for waiting. All right. It's so lovely to see you all guys here. It's cool, it's very cool. And we are literally all over the place. Like we are from from Spain, from Portugal, from Ireland, from Prague. This is great. Oh, France, Denmark, Sweden. Guys, we could found something international here, okay? So, all right, so the warmest welcome to everybody here and welcome to this webinar again. And let's just proceed and jump in. So what are we here for? We are here to talk about portfolios, UX portfolios, UI portfolios, and I'm going to share some knowledge and wisdom that I learned along the way of being a freelancer and building up an agency. Now, what I wanted to just quickly address some things. You can see Sonia, my assistant here, and she will be picking up some questions and answering if you guys have any questions. Now, we are going to do the Q&A at the end. So feel free to post your questions whenever they might come up. So feel free to just post it in the chat, and then I will answer that in the Q&A section. Okay. So I have a quick poll because this is interactive. Okay. So oh, you guys already answered it, and I haven't even. Okay. So we have a lot of responses from the poll, and can I just put it out there? I will do that. Poll share now. No, I cannot. Okay, here's the poll. Okay, so this is looking great. Anyway, so we can see that we have a lot of folks here who want to get hired as designers, and some of us are freelancers, which is very cool because I want to kind of address both sides. So, we talk a lot about portfolios being the primary asset to getting hired, but it's also a very vital tool as a freelance designer. And I want to address that today as well. So I highly recommend, if you're like a multitasker, I'm definitely guilty of this myself as well, but I highly recommend just switching off all the distractions like your phone and anything. I did that too, because that would come across strange if I would be answering call during the webinar. So I won't do that, and I advise you do the same. So here's our agenda for today. I have a quick warm-up exercise before we jump into the 5 most common UX portfolio mistakes. So I have a quick 5-minute exercise, and then we dive into the portfolio mistakes. Then I have a special announcement, and then we're going to do the Q&A at the end, okay? Does that sound good? And if you, for some reason, a lot of people I know for time zone differences, they couldn't make it, but there's going to be a replay available. So if you need to head out early, or you want to rewatch it later, then you will have the opportunity, and you will get that as an email tomorrow. Okay? So if it's all set, then we can jump into our little exercise, which is a project vetting exercise. Now, what I mean by it is the project vetting is when you decide what you need to include in your portfolio. And it might seem trivial, but it's a great thing if you follow a little process like this one. So the goal of this exercise is to create a short list of projects that you can include in your portfolio. And a lot of people frequently ask me like how many projects I need. Now, my answer is like 4 to 6. That's like a good number. And all of the recruiters that I worked with and asked, like, they would say 4 to 6 all the time. But if you have less, just like 2 or 3, that's perfectly good to get started. So whenever you list out your portfolios, your projects, then you want to end up with a list of 4 to 6 projects. So step 1 is listing out everything that you have. For this, I highly recommend firing up your email and going through the threads you've been emailing with clients and on projects. Fire up Figma or Sketch or XD or whatever you've been working on, and just list them out. Don't filter, don't prune, don't do anything with them. Just list them out. And the second step, and this is very important, and maybe this is the most important part of this exercise, is you need to pair the projects with your ideal customer avatar, which is kind of your dream client. Who do you want to work with? Okay, because with your portfolio, what you want to do is you want to reverse engineer. So you want to take like where you want to be, the ideal companies and the ideal client for you, and try to see like which of the projects are relevant to that client, because you want to attract that client with your portfolio. So what I like to do here is I'll just write up, say, I'm going after startups in the educational space, and I'm going to maybe project 1, 4, and 6 is good for that client. And I'm going to look at the rest of the projects and sort them out that way. Still not pruning, not crossing anything off the list. And then step 3 is going to be pruning. So then I'm going to look at, and yeah, that project that's not very nice. I don't want to include it. There's project 5, which is protected by an NDA. And there's a couple of things that you can do about NDAs, but eventually it's a good thing to label it and mark it for yourself. So basically what you want to do at the end here is that use this little chart I created. So basically, do you have 4 to 6 good projects after pruning and after coming up with this quick list? If yes, you're ready to roll and you can create your portfolio. If not, then you need to ask yourself the question like, is it because of NDAs? And if yes, then I recommend trying to redact some information, or maybe rebrand it, or maybe take the concept of the designs and then turn it into kind of a concept work or a fake project. And maybe that way you will have enough projects. And if no, then you need to do some fake projects, or you need to do some more projects before you could actually flesh out and update your portfolio. This little exercise that I wanted to show you, you might be like, okay, this is definitely something that I would do anyways, but I like to give it a structure and a little step-by-step process for it. So again, before diving into the 5 mistakes, I wanted to first address some of the mindset shifts that we will be making in here. So there might be a couple of reasons why you were interested in this webinar. So you might be, you need to create your portfolio, or you need to update it, but you are procrastinating and constantly pushing back on it because there were always something more important. And I totally get it, okay? It's fine. However, it really hurts your business, because every day you don't have an up-to-date portfolio, you're missing out on opportunities. So basically, I was doing that for a long time, but it really backfired, and I was rushing to update and create it instead of dedicating the time and taking the time to create it properly. And when I finally did, I didn't need to touch it for 2 years because it was selling so well. Now, another reason you might be here is you might not know where to start with your portfolio. You have learned about a lot of different things about like whether if it should be a PDF or if it should be a website, and you kind of feel lost. And I want to help you in this webinar. And the reason 3 might be like, you need to update it. You have some ideas, maybe you did it in the past, but now you realize like you need to properly take the time to do it. So whichever is your reason of being here, I totally support it, and I'm really happy you were here because I was there too. So just a little bit background. This webinar, I promise, is not going to be like a biography of me. But just if we meet for the first time, then I started as a freelancer, and then I built up my own UX UI agency. And I eventually, it's a great team, but I wanted to move on. So I exited the business. I sold it to a company in the United States. And I went back to freelancing, which I really enjoy, because I really enjoy the one-on-one dedicated attention that I can give to clients. And I work with Fortune 500 companies. I'm currently part of TopTal, which is an elite freelancing platform. And I can say, which I just realized like 6 months ago, that I've designed for over 3.5 million users. I mean, that's the number that the amount of people using my designs as tools right as we speak, which is very cool, because that proves that as a designer, you can have impact. You can actually, change the world. It might be a cliche, but you can actually do that. So just to give you a little peek inside the curtain of what it's like to be on this level. And it's not about showing off. I just wanted to show you that if you don't feel very good about your current position, or if you want to transition into UX, or maybe you're a designer, but there's more to all this, you can feel that, then I can serve as a proof that there is. You can reach that level where you can pick your own clients, pick the clients that you want to work with, only work on the projects that you really enjoy, and you can set your own time. Well, you can do that as a freelancer all the time, but setting your own time in a sense of, yeah, you really only work when you want to. And one thing that I really wanted to share, it's not bragging, it's something that I want you to experience, is getting a ton of appreciation. Clients loving like the design, the process, the ideas that I can bring to the table. And so obviously this is one of the main reasons why I like to be a designer and I like to do freelancing. And my other love is obviously with you guys and teaching and education and trying to help you get from where you are to where I am at the moment, and then surpass me, of course. So just for a sec, let's future pace. Can you imagine like how it would feel if you could do whatever you want, you could take the projects what you want, you can set your own hours, getting paid well, whatever that means to you. There's an endless potential in making money in design. So, can you imagine that? By the way, this is actually a photo I took when I was in the Caribbean on an ocean cruise. It's one of the most peaceful moments in my life. Anyway, you need a portfolio, and you need a kick-ass portfolio to get there and to get started with all that. And that leaves us with the 5 most common UX UI portfolio mistakes. So what are we going to do here is, I don't want to sound negative, so what are we going to do is I'll explain the common mistakes that I saw as a freelancer, I did as an entrepreneur many, many times. So I don't want you to make these mistakes. So I'm going to present it, and then we're going to talk about like how can you avoid it? How can you not make the mistakes that many other people do? And I was consulting with some top recruiters lately, and you can actually hear one of the interviews on my podcast. And so I just wanted to double check that we hit the nail on the head with the most common mistakes, so that you can definitely avoid them. Okay. All right, it's just firing up. So we're gonna have these five mistakes, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Q&A. All right, let's start out. So number 1 is not showcasing the process behind the designs. It's kind of a big one, by the way. And what I mean by that is usually what people do is they just show the deliverables. So they show like, okay, this is a screen. Okay, that's a mobile screen, but it's like, okay, I don't have the story. I don't know, how you get there. What was the process that you used? What were the problems that you faced? Like, what's the story? And what you need to understand is when you're presenting work, you are telling a story, and you are taking all the learnings and your professional thoughts and experiences and interpreting them to whoever is viewing, the recruiter, the hiring manager, or clients if you are a freelance designer. So this is actually very crucial, because it's equally important like what you did, meaning the project, the research, the designs, and how you did it. Okay. So if you're looking from the company's point of view, then lately I heard in many cases that particularly for junior designers or mid-year designers, some companies are even more interested in the process and how you get to the result than the actual deliverable. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense, because if you're a junior designer, maybe the outcome might not look like, something that's really good, that I really like. But if you can show me that you used a good process, then I can see, okay, with that process, we can deliver great results, even if I'm looking into different results than that you came up with. But that's why the process is so important. And for clients as well, you need to show, as a freelance designer, in many cases, the number one thing that sold me as a designer was the process, that I have this 7-step process. And when I sit down with a client, I walk them through, like, this is what we do first. This is a kickoff workshop, and then we do the research. And when I talk about a project, then I always tie back to my process and to the experiences and to the outcomes that we learned during the project. So, and above all, the what you did and how you did it. It's like the why you did it. And maybe that's the most important thing. And if you walk away with one thing today, then I want it to be this, like, tell me the whys behind your project, behind your design decision, like why you chose that research method, why you chose that color, why you focus on that KPI, like why? Because that's something that, as a hiring manager, as a recruiter, I can definitely work with, okay? Because unfortunately, if the client or the recruiter or the hiring manager don't get the why, then they won't understand the value that you can bring to the table. Because it's very hard to decrypt and kind of extract value from a deliverable, just seeing a nice design, okay? So here I wanted to be a little practical and show you some examples. Here's a guy called Matt Olpinski, and he's a great designer. He's an educator, and he runs a membership as well called the Freelance Institute. Definitely check it out. And I wanted to bring a few pieces from his portfolio, because it's a very good example that you can learn from. So what you can see is that he built up a linear kind of case study for each of the projects. So you can see one project here, and it starts with the challenge. Like, what did we face? What were the problems? What did we need to accomplish with the designs? And then here's a few pieces that I want to highlight here, is being very spot on of what's the added value. For instance, configurable dashboard. That's like a deliverable. That's like a statement there. But watch this. Managers want to see the progress and efficiency over time. Okay, that might be a requirement. And then he reacts to that, like saying, that's why we designed a powerful dashboard that lets each user choose what widgets and components they want based on their role in the company. So very nicely, he kind of reflects on the fact that they did like stakeholder interviews, and he's very clear on the business objectives, and he shows how he tied that into the design. Or there's one of my favorites. Actually, I know somebody who designed something very similar than this. You can see a pretty cool photo and a mock-up there. And, it looks like a dark mode. Okay, this is very trendy. But you don't know the story until you read it. And the story here, let me just read it out for you, is the priority to design the entire product in dark mode to help reduce strain on the user's eye in low-light production rooms. So basically, he explains very clearly that since the end users were using the software in dark rooms, in a dark environment, then they needed to use dark mode. So it's just better to look at a dark interface in a dark room, because it's not melting your eyes. So that made the design accessible. That's how I understand the value you can bring to the table. That's because that's why I don't just look at and see a pretty design, but okay, so you solve the problem with this pretty design, and you can solve it for me as well. All right, so I recommend for case studies something like this. This is where we started. So like, problems, need, challenges, business objectives. Definitely start a case study from there. And then ease into solving it. Like, what was the process that you used? What, the design deliverables, the research, the iterating, and try to constantly tie it back to the problems, needs, and challenges. And then you arrive to the outcomes, which is very, very important in a case study. Like, what were the results, the tangible results, KPIs, or what you learned? In many cases, people ask me about, like, okay, but what do I do if I don't have KPIs, I don't have numbers, it was a new product, not tested or not anything? There are lots of metrics that you can still use. So there are usability metrics that you can definitely hone in on. For instance, the feature adoption of something or the ease of use. You can conduct usability tests and use those metrics to show improvement, like in a before-after state. So even if you don't have like conversions or churn or the big numbers, then you can still use like usability metrics. All right. So this was mistake number 1, not showcasing the progress behind the designs. On to mistake number 2. By the way, I'm huge fan of The Queen's Gambit. It's just a brilliant miniseries on Netflix. So if you haven't watched it, I'm not affiliated. It's not a paid advertising or anything. I just literally, this is one of my favorite series, and the music is wonderful. So anyway, just check it out. All right, so not showcasing the progress behind the designs, mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is not being clear on your goal. Now, this is going to be a pretty quick one, because it's very easy to overcome this issue. But what you need to understand, or what you need to ask yourself is, like, what did you do on the project? What was your role? Maybe you created wireframes, maybe you conducted research, or you did the whole UX strategy part, or the UI design, or you wrote the dev specification. Whatever that was, you need to be super clear. And this is a word of advice, especially if you want to get hired at a company, because something that recruiters will be very much interested in is to understanding that the design they'll look at, which part belongs to you, what was your contribution. And if you're a junior designer, you might be just collaborating with other people, and that's fine. We all start like that, but you need to be transparent on your role, because if you're not, then it's very likely that recruiters will just pass, and they will say, okay, I'll just find another candidate, because I'm not sure about this candidate, because I don't know if that was the full story that he laid out. Here's a quick example from one of the portfolios that I used for a while, and as you can see, just very quickly, I'll go in. What was the scope of the project, my role, and the process? It's kind of a little one-pager for a project. It's definitely not something that you use in your website. It's more like a quick PDF that I was sending to potential clients, and when I was getting into TopTal as well. But this is very, very important, that I was really clear that, hey, I did the UX strategy part, and I did the full thing, the workshops, the research, the interface. So when the recruiters look at it, they see, oh, okay, this guy is full stack. So if we need research, we can get him on for research, or if we need workshops, that he can do that too. So like I said, again, mistake number 2 was not being clear on your role. Okay. Now, mistake number 3 is going to be focusing on deliverables instead of outcomes. Now, this is a bigger topic. So what I mean by that, a deliverable sounds like this: I created wireframes for the project. And it's like, okay, right. It's like, I'm an architect, I built a house. So the problem with this kind of thing is that it doesn't tell me any actual information that I can work with, like why you did what you did, what the client or the users gain by that solution or that step in the process. And maybe most important, like, how it moved the whole thing forward. It's like I created wireframes and then I did user research and I did visual design. One is boring, but more importantly, it doesn't tell what was your value. It's like, hooray, you read a book on UX, you know that you need to create wireframes. You need to explain why you did that and how it benefited the process. So instead, you can say something like that. Creating wireframes first enabled us to design the core interactions and test them out with users before spending time on the visual design. That way, we saved a lot of time, but not implementing solutions we found not working so well during the usability tests. Now, obviously, it's just not a single sentence like the first one. But if you make some notes here, then you can see there's a lot of value in it. So I pointed out that we created wireframes. Okay. But in the first sentence, immediately I tied back like how it was beneficial. How it was beneficial? Testing out core interactions. What we gained by it, we basically saved time because we learned a lot and not implemented solutions that were, that was not kind of validated through the usability tests. And we saved a lot of time for visual design. And I could say, well, for development, 100%. So this is what you want to do, is that you take the result and you reverse engineer from there. So you ask questions like, okay, what was the result? How your designs impacted business? What problems you solved? What was the challenge? Now, one thing just a very short caveat here. When it comes to UX, a lot of people say like, okay, but we are an advocate for the user. And that's true. We are user experience designers, but that makes no sense if it's not aligned with the business. You are designing for the business and advocating for the users. It does not work. One does not work without the other, okay? So if you want to walk away with one thing today, then don't just say that, yeah, we're focusing on users, because you will get paid from clients or from a company to solve issues for the users that generates revenue or reduces churn, okay? So very important takeaway, your portfolio is not a diary. And by that mean is, it's not a diary of what you did. It's selling what you did. It's selling your process, your experience, and your method, your ideas, and your problem-solving skills. So like I said, the process, the solution, designs, and the problem-solving skills. So with that said, mistake number 3 was not focusing on deliverables. Sorry, the other way around. So focusing on deliverables and not on the outcomes. And this is something that you need to rewire yourself and saying outcomes, how it benefited the client, how it benefited the users, what do we gain by this, why, okay? And you will be fine. Now, a controversial one, low quality portfolio. Now, you might go like, okay, of course, you don't want a low quality portfolio, duh. But what I mean by that is basically 2 things. It's including subpar or lower quality projects and a lower quality overall presentation of the portfolio. Let's address both of them. Many people think that they need to show more projects in their portfolio. Can easily backfire on you. And that's why I told you in the beginning, like, you are good with 4 to 6 projects. I don't have more in my current portfolio, and it gets me clients all the time. Now, the problem with including too many projects is, in many cases, people include something that's, it's not very high quality, but they include it anyways, because then they could show that I work with so many companies and so many projects. Now, the problem with that is that having more projects doesn't mean that you are a professional. Then just think about luxury brands like Apple having a handful of products. and compare that to like a thrift shop, or like a big supermarket. Which one feels more exclusive and higher quality? The one that only features a handful of projects and a handful of products, or the other which has everything from toilet papers to airplanes? So basically, the real big issue, if you include anything that's below your standards, is this is your message. This is like the good, bad, and the ugly. When the client looks at your portfolio, or the recruiter or the hiring manager, they will ask this question. They will be wondering about this. Which project will I get from you for my projects? Is it going to be that awesome one? Or is it going to be that less awesome one or pretty awful one that you also included? So you need a very high standard. And if that means that you can have less but super high quality projects, then by all means, that's the way to go. So if you have 3, 4, that's awesome. If you have 2, 3, which is really nice, then that's still good. And don't include anything that's below your level. Now, a quick actionable tip here, and I did this a lot of time, is you can also refurbish projects that are maybe old or lower quality, or maybe you don't have all the assets to it. For instance, I was actually refurbishing an old project that was really cool at that time, but we only did wireframes, and at the time of updating my portfolio, I basically, there were like 5, 4, 6 years passed since that project, but the project itself was interesting. So I just took the concept and I rebranded it. I redesigned it under a different name and turned the wireframes into like a crisp UI design. So it was a very important piece in my portfolio, even though it was refurbished, because it was from older times and it was just a wireframe, but I didn't want to include that. I couldn't include that without lowering my standards. So I just refurbish it, and you can totally do that. Now, let's hop on to the other thing, the low quality presentation. Now, what I mean by that is when the quality of your portfolio, how it looks, is not very nice. And this is very frequent, by the way, especially for UX designers who are more on the strategy side of things. So maybe they are really, really comfortable like doing research, doing workshops with the client, but the visual side, the UI, is not their strength. And that's why the PDFs and their websites just don't look that good. Now, some people can get away with it, but here's the deal. I know for a fact you can lose a lot of opportunities with this. And it shouldn't be a big deal. So even if you think that I'm a UI designer, I'm a strategy, or I'm into UX, the problem is like no one cares. It's about presenting your work, and you need to have the highest standards for that visually as well. I mean, heck, whatever I did, I was always make sure it looks awesome. Even this presentation, it's like a 98 slide presentation, and I spend so much time to put it together. So when you look at it and hear me talk, I wanted you to look at something that's beautiful, that looks great. And it's not just because of this. I'm a designer. Obviously, the core content would be enjoyable if it would look shit, so to speak. Sorry for the the language, but you get my point. The presentation, the packaging is very, very important, because in many cases, if your portfolio does not look appealing, then your UX expertise, your research skills, your strategy competence won't get a shot. Maybe for recruiters and hiring managers, in some cases, yes. But if you're into freelancing, then it's definitely a takeaway. Clients only care about the beautiful design stuff. So make sure whatever you include, it looks awesome. So portfolio website, the case studies. If you have some data, Make sure it's not boring, okay? So use infographics or mock-ups or images. And in many cases, what I recommend is it's worth learning how to do it. But if you don't have the time, if you don't know how to do it and you don't want to learn to do it, there are options out there. You can maybe get a friend to do it for you, or even pay somebody to create a stunning slide deck for you, or you can buy some templates or download a free but nicely designed template. Just put in the work of making sure that whatever you send to a recruiter or a client or a hiring manager, that looks awesome. So mistake number 4 was low quality portfolio. Both goes for the presentation itself, and the projects never include anything that's subpar. Okay, now number 5 is going to be different, because this is a very, very common mistake that I see. But it ties back into your goals and the lack of targeting that I see from many people. What I see in most portfolios is they don't have a clear picture of who they want to work with. And this is the first thing that I ask people, like, what do you want to do? Do you want to get hired? Do you want to go freelance? And if so, how does the dream company, the dream job look like for you? What are the traits? If you're into freelance, like, who do you want to work with? This is the single most important question you need to ask. Because if you don't, it's very hard to land the dream job, okay? And something that I will show you in a minute, it's very hard to target companies. Now, let's go one by one. So many people think that, it's all about the client falling in love with you. And many fail to ask, like, okay, but what about the other way around? What about me knowing who I want to work with? What are the traits of a good client? Like, what I value in a client, what makes me happy? And I tell you what, for me, this was the game changer when I started to think about this question, like, who do I want to work with? Which types of projects bring me joy? So I want you to think about these questions. Who's your ideal client? What makes a client or company attractive to you? Or what are the projects? Maybe you love doing landing pages. Maybe you don't like ramping up WordPress pages, but maybe you really enjoy the complexity of redesigning the SaaS products. Maybe you have industry preferences. For instance, I don't do any projects in financial technology, fintech. I'm not interested. I love investing as an investor, but I don't enjoy the fintech as a space, and it needs a lot of experience and knowledge to be a good fintech designer, and I'm just simply not up for it. But for me, education technology is a huge, huge love. One of my favorite clients, we were working together for years, called Adrak, and they help students in the Middle East, in Jordan and Egypt and Syria, with free Arabic educational content, and I'm kind of the lead designer. And I love everything that's education. I mean, heck, that's why I'm here. I'm teaching right now. My mother is a teacher. It's like everything, part of my life is really about education. And that's what makes me a great designer when it comes to an educational project, because I have my heart in it. I wouldn't have my heart in it for fintech. That's why you have to be clear on this. And also, you need to be clear on the red flags. Now, this is what I learned with lots of sweat and tears. What I mean by it is, like, what are the traits of a very bad client that you can spot early on. And if you see that, you need to be running in the opposite direction. And for years, I was following the path of, I need to take on every client. I need it for myself, and then I need it for the team. I cannot say no. Like, if you come to me with a project and you had enough money, And we're not talking about like millions. So, but if you had money, I was taking you on as a client until I realized it's very important to be aware of those red flags. For instance, for me, if somebody doesn't value my process, they want to dictate, we are not going to be a great fit. I bring the expertise, I bring the process, you trust me as a professional. I only work with clients where I feel the trust, where they come to me because they know that I can bring them the values that they are after, and they have trust in me. For instance, that's a huge red flag. Another very practical red flag is I don't do work with people who don't sign contracts. For instance, in Hungary, some people go like, oh, no, we don't need a contract. We can just start working, whatever. It's like, well, no. If you're not serious enough of saying, all right, let's sign this contract, we won't go to court anyways, but still, let's do it properly. It's like paper form means that you want to do things properly. And that's just how I like to do work. That's how I like to do business. So you need to be super focused and super clear on who's your ideal customer avatar. And you can call that, it's marketing, it's called ideal customer avatar. In UX, that's called a user persona. All right. So on to the next thing, which is you cannot target companies if you're not clear on who do you want to work with. Now, what I mean by that, it's a little industry secret here, is I had a very huge success creating niche specific portfolios. So what I did is I created specific portfolios and specific PDFs for the industries that I was working on, with the different clients that I was working on, for different portfolio for startups, different portfolio for potential enterprises, because for an enterprise, they're interested in different things. Different testimonials will be relevant, different projects will be relevant, different service offerings I have for them, which I don't have for startups, and vice versa. And to do this, you need to be very clear on who do you want to work with, or what are the type of clients you want to go after, so that you can really hone in and say, okay, these are the 2 or 3 types of clients that I want to work with. And the more specific you can get, the better. So let's say I want to go after startups in the US, and they already have an MVP, they launched it to the market, they have engineers, and they're looking for designers, and they realized that they need UX expertise. This is a very like laid out user persona. This is something that you can research. You can go after companies using these description. And this is a good thing. This is how you can market something. And this is how you can target these companies, because now you can go ahead and create a portfolio and basically tailor everything for this type of client. With that said, now we have the 5 mistakes. Mistake number 1 was not showcasing the process. Remember, process is everything. How you get there, why you did what you did. Mistake number 2, not being clear on your goal. You need to be transparent. What was your contribution to the project? Put it up front, put it up in a visible space, so it's very easy to identify that straight away. Mistake number 3 was focusing on deliverables too much. And you need to change this and rewire your brain, so instead you focus on the outcomes, meaning what did you achieve? What did you improve? What challenge you solved, and what difficulty did you overcome with your solution? Mistake number 4 was low quality portfolio. That stands for never including anything that's subpar. Last projects work well. Just ask any recruiter, they'll say, like, if you have 2-3 projects, it's not an issue. If you're a junior designer, it's not a problem at all. but don't be including irrelevant projects or stuff that doesn't look great, because it's going to hurt your reputation. And when it comes to the packaging, trust me, you want to always do something that looks awesome. If it's a PDF, if it's a slide deck, if it's your website, or hack your email that you send out, everything needs to look beautiful. Because even if you're not selling UI, you're going to have a great first impression. And ultimately, this is what you want to do. A quick story here, not UI designer, not visual designer, not graphic, not designer at all. The guy was into CX, customer experience. And what he did is he designed, I mean, he got a designer, design it for him. He got his portfolio designed, which was about like service offerings, and he printed it out in like very high quality paper. So when he was sitting down with executives in their offices, and he was pulling out this beautiful design, like almost like a magazine, and he told me the reaction was always like they were completely blown away. So many of the management were like calling the secretary and say like, why our stuff doesn't look this good? I want our stuff to look this good as well. So even though that was charts and text and, you know, boring stuff, he was having one foot in the door already because the presentation were so good. Okay, so, and mistake number 5 was the lack of clarity around goals. And like I said, be clear on who do you want to go after? Who is your dream customer? What makes a company exciting for you? And the earlier you start thinking about this, the sooner you will end up in the dream position. I really see that when people get clear on their goals, then they can take actionable steps towards their goals. Okay. All right. So at this point, would you like me to personally help you creating that kick-ass portfolio that we've been talking about so far? Because you have basically 2 options. Option 1 is obviously you can create your portfolio on your own, and millions of designers do that, and nothing wrong with that. But that means that you need to figure out, you know, everything, like how to lay out the case study, how to pick projects that really work, how to create all those design assets, how to create a portfolio website, which platforms you need to have your website on. Should it be a website? Should it be a landing page? Should you use a service for this and that? How to build up a PDF? How to sell yourself with a slide deck? So you need to figure out all those questions on your own. Or option B is to follow my proven roadmap with step-by-step instructions and techniques, which I know they're known to deliver results. So with that said, I want to personally invite you to the 30-day portfolio challenge. And this is my first ever digital course that I created specifically for designers to create their stellar portfolio from the very beginning to the very last stages. Okay, so just to give you an idea, this is what the course is about. We are getting super clear on goals and strategy. We are defining your ideal customer avatar that was talking about just a few minutes ago, like how you can be super clear on who you should go after. Then we are developing an elevator pitch, which is very important. You shouldn't show up like, hey, I'm a designer, I'm a UX designer from XYZ. You need this is called like positioning. You need to position yourself on the market. You need to find your niche. You need to find your voice, okay? And I'll help you with that. And then I'll teach you how to write super effective case studies and creating those design assets, like how and when to use GIFs and videos and embedded content, or when to embed your prototype, or how to go about it in your case study and how to build the whole thing up. And most importantly, how to create your portfolio website, your PDF, and a slide deck presentation, because I truly believe you need all of them. You need both, not both, all the three of them. And this is how the course is structured. So week 1, we are focusing on the strategy. That's mainly the customer, the ideal customer avatar, the pitch, and everything. And then in week 2, we're going to be going through all your projects, vet them, sort them, and create the case studies. I'm going to teach you some writing skills as well, and how to do that. So if you're not very good with English or just writing, then I thought of that too, and I want to help you with that as well. So by week 2, you have a laid out list of things that you can include in your portfolio. And I'll also address what to do if you don't have enough projects, because I know for a fact that's a big issue. And I was teaching on Instagram and on this webinar and in my podcast a lot about how you can get projects, but I'm also doing my very best to lay it out for you in a step-by-step way. So all you need to do is just to follow it. And week 4 is going to be creating that that portfolio website together, step by step. And week 4, the offline portfolios, which is the PDF and the slide deck. So it's pretty tough, and that's why I call it a challenge, because you need to do it like now. You need to overcome all the the procrastinations and maybe all the false beliefs that you might have that you need to wait or you need to do that project. It's like you need to do it now, and I want to give you that push and that support, and to show you how sure I am that this is going to work, is that I'm offering a 30-day money-back guarantee. And this course is only 30 days long. You will have access to the course after that as well. But essentially, it's a 4 weeks course, 30 days, and the money-back guarantee is 30 days. And that's because if you join this challenge and you put in the work, then, and if you still don't feel that good about it, or you have doubts or anything, all you need to do is just to show me that you put in the work. And in that case, if you don't want it, I want to refund your money, because I know that this program works because I put in years and years of experience, and I'm actually planning and working on this course for 2 years. So I know for a fact that it works. And actually, I wanted to give you just a little bit of a fun backstory of why I came up with this idea of the portfolios and what was my trigger for this course. And it starts with me taking an online course. And just a few years before, I only knew Udemy and these well-known platforms to take online courses. And I came across Amy Porterfield, and she teaches online marketing and list building, and eventually digital courses as well. And that was a completely different ballgame, because what I was used to is Udemy provides great value for just for a very cheap price, basically. But it's all about mass production. It's like hundreds of thousands of students. You don't have a personal connection with the teacher. You cannot really reach out. I never liked Udemy as a teacher because I don't have a connection with my students. So I only knew that mass production until I enrolled in a course and started discovering that there's a whole new way to doing digital courses. And I'll tell you what, this literally changed my life. When I saw that with a digital course, you can be super step-by-step. And this course by Amy Porterfield was not about 40, 50 hours of video content and this and that. It was all trimmed and super laser focused on you getting action, getting things done. So it was literally like a step-by-step cookbook of you do this first, and then you do that, and then you do that, and you get results. And when I saw that, I was super excited. I was like 2 or 3 years ago, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. I want it. I'm all about being actionable. Guys, if me from the podcast or the Instagram, I only love stuff that's super step by step. And that was why it was such a revelation. So what I did for this course is, of course, the content is video content, but it's all about you getting action. There's no lesson that's not actionable. And what I mean by that is the biggest differentiator that you don't find anywhere else, and this is why I did this in the first place, is that because for every lesson, there's a worksheet or a guide or a checklist that will make it very actionable for you. And there's 3 of my favorites that I picked out. For instance, I have the portfolio slide deck blueprint in my course, and that is like a 16-page PDF that shows you slide by slide by slide the exact portfolios, the exact sales material that I was using as a freelancer and for my agency as well. Or there's the other one, the portfolio scripts, which is again a pretty extensive PDF where I have written down like pre-written phrases that you can copy paste in your portfolio. And it's categorized like what you can say when you want to pitch usability testing or user interviews, or how to talk about wireframes. And in many cases, it's like a fill in the blank. And those phrases are like, professionally written phrases, but they will also help you focus on the outcomes and the outcomes and the goals, basically. So if you're not that good with copywriting and you need a little inspiration, then these are basically like drag and drop, copy and paste text snippets you can use. Or because I know it's a problem for many of us to write good copy. And then there's the fake project briefs. I actually, just for this course, I didn't share anywhere else. I've created 10 fake project briefs from my actual real life projects, just under different names. And I've included the whole like project description, requirements, user needs, functionality map. So I teach different techniques for getting projects if you're a beginner, but this is another option that I provide in this course, which is if you like one of the project ideas there and you might feel that they're relevant to your ideal customer avatar, you can just grab it and start designing instead of trying to come up with something on your own. Anyway, I just wanted to share this with you guys because this is what makes a course super actionable, and this is how you can get results. Now, many of you asked me about mentoring and giving feedback, and I really love this, and I really love when you guys reach out. Obviously, I only have so much time, but for this course, I have a limited offer for this one, which is a personalized one-on-one video feedback. So you're gonna see just in a minute, I offer this course in basically 2 packages, and if you opt in for the VIP package, then every week you can send me your questions and you send me what you've been working on. If it's the ICA, or if it's or the positioning or your elevator pitch or your website portfolio or anything. Each week you send me your questions and send me the work that you put in, and I send you back just a one-on-one personalized video of me going through answering all the questions you have and providing feedback on all the materials that you submitted. You may ask, like, why is it not live? Why is it not a meeting? Well, it's very simple. It's much more effective than this. If we would jump on a real life call, then there would be chit chat, which is nice because I would love to get to know you guys all. But if I look from the efficiency standpoint, then in like a 15 to 20 minute video, I can tell you so much about like a lot of feedback, answer all your questions without needing to adjust my pace. And maybe if you have some difficulties with the language, that's totally fine. You can rewatch it, you can rewind it, or even slow it down. So I find this kind of asynchronous communication really, really effective. Note that this is going to be very, very limited. Just a few seats available for this VIP feedback. And this is for people who are like really serious about their portfolio and really want to fast track their progress. So in a few days, this option is going to be gone because I only have so much time, and I rather take on just a few students and give them the best I got than oversubscribe and I don't know, get on a ton and then you get disappointed. So anyway, just know that this option will run out really quickly. But for everybody, I will provide this for the course, which is the private Facebook group. So for the duration of the course plus a few weeks, so actually for 7 weeks, I will have a private Facebook group where I'll show up live every single week, answering your questions, and I will help you and support you in the group. So even if you're not in the VIP package, you will have access to me, because like I said, my goal is to help you with this course to get a portfolio that really makes a difference and gets you closer to your goals and to your dream roles. So with that said, there's the 2 packages. The course only is $97 US. For that, you get the whole 4 modules and the lifetime access to the course. And you also get the private Facebook group with the weekly live Q&A. And if you're really serious about ramping up your portfolio and you really want that personal feedback every single week from me, then you have the option to opt in for the VIP with a one-on-one feedback for $297. All you need to do is to go to csabahazi.com/enroll. I'm gonna pop up the link here just in a second. I think I can actually do that like now. Yes, I can totally do that right now. And yes, about the timing, it's very important. It's the card is only open until January 31, which is next Sunday. Okay, so in this time frame, I'm selling the course, and you have the option to enroll, because the course itself starts January 1, 2021. I don't know why I was thinking about that so much. So February 1, the course starts. So you have until next Sunday to enroll. And just to clear up a few of the doubts, because you might have some, everyone has some. You might think that, okay, it sounds good, but I'm too busy, I'll do it later. Now, I'm not saying that I don't agree with you, and I definitely feel for you, but know this, with every day, with every week or month, not updating your portfolio, you might be losing out on a lot of opportunities. And I would hate to do that to you. And so what I recommend doing is really dedicating the time, even with me, without me, I don't care, but, well, I do care, obviously, but I want you to work on your portfolio now, because you can do what I call the minimum viable portfolio, which is do a stellar portfolio that you can do now in a couple of weeks and start reaching out to potential clients, start sending application to companies. And then once you have more projects, you can include that and update your portfolio. So it's not like you need to find for the perfect moment to create your portfolio, because that was yesterday. Now, the other frequent thing that I hear is, but I don't have enough good projects. So it's lovely, I would love the course, but how can I do a portfolio if I don't have enough good projects? And let me tell you a story about one of my STAR students. And we were working together, and when he wanted to change careers and go to another company, we went through the whole process that I teach in the course. And we actually started with that little exercise that I showed you in the beginning, which is vetting, all the projects. And what we ended up understanding is the problem was he only had projects that he collaborated with other people. And that's not a very good thing if you want to get hired, because collaboration is good, obviously. But I told him that we need a project where you can really show your skills, where you can really shine and show what you're capable of, even if you didn't have the chance to do a full project on your own. So what we did is we created a fake project. I was providing all the briefing and the instructions and everything. And he did 200%. He gave in 200%, doing everything, the full step-by-step UX process with the user-centered business canvas, the user personas, doing some preliminary research, and creating wireframes, the look and feel designs, the UI, everything. And you know what? At the end, that was the project that sold him to the company, because he got hired in, I think, under a month to one of the most well-known Hungarian agencies. And he told me later that they were all talking about that project alone. Obviously, he had more projects in his portfolio, and that was good, that was necessary. But that was the project, that fake project, that sold him. And I'm going to teach this whole framework around how you can do the same as well. So if you feel that, man, I don't have enough good projects, well, if you don't have, I have the strategies how to overcome that. So just to reiterate one more time, the course only $97, and you get the full course material with 28 lessons and all the downloadable documents, which, to be honest, that's the most important part. I would be glad to sell that alone without the videos, because they are so good. And you have the private Facebook group. And on the other hand, if you're really serious about it and you want to fast track that process, then hop on and check out the VIP feedback with the one-on-one coaching sessions each week for $297. And yeah, here's the link that I put in here, csabohadza.com/enroll. Now to the Q&A. All right. Let me stop here for a moment and drink a little bit. What about, let's go back to camera. What do you think? Let's go back to, hey, I'm still here. All right, so, all right. So we have a lot of questions, and oh, the first one is so good. I love this. Just give me a few seconds. I'm ramping up this little sheets here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for this chat is too active. Anyway, I kind of put up the question onto the screen. So instead, I'm just going to read it out. So Shanna, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, was asking, could you make it a password protected project if proprietary? Okay, so when it comes to password protecting, and this is actually something we discussed in one of the latest UX Kitchen episodes, is I'm not a fan of password protecting something, because that is basically admitting that you're breaching an NDA, because you cannot, why on earth would you password protect something? So if it's protected by NDA, it's not a very good idea to password protect it. And some recruiters are fine with this. Some would say, it's not the best practice, but everybody agrees that it's a lot better if you just rebrand it, just take one part of the app and turn it into a new project. If you think about it, we as designers rarely design something so unique that, it couldn't be a different project if you change a few things, okay? So password protection, I'm not a huge fan, to be honest. Okay, we have a question from Asia. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. In which program it's best to create a presentation of work? I have my own page where I just add text and picture of personas, diagram flows, but when I scroll through someone else's portfolios, they look so much more professional, like prepared in some graphic program. Sometimes it's a long graphic and sometimes it looks like one, but it's cut into smaller parts, or it just can be made in Figma. Okay, I think I know what you mean, and I think what you mean is the kind of what you can see on Behance. So the whole portfolio looks like one design, if it would like a flyer or something like that. Now, what you need to understand is I would say the answer is both. I don't like that Behance type of designs. That works for Behance, but I wouldn't put on my website for multiple reasons. You need to have the copy in. You need text because that's good for SEO and all that. And it's not the most user-friendly, that one image kind of thing. So I definitely think that a good case study with some nice visuals, even if it looks a little bit plainer to you, is known to perform better. What I would definitely learn from these guys is that to, not in the case study part, but maybe on your main page, maybe on the thumbnails, make sure it looks really good and what I like to call like an eye candy. So the eye candy where you look at it and you cannot make out the details, but it looks awesome. That's the eye candy. Now, don't put eye candy in a case study, because in the case study you want to focus people on what you achieved in your end results. But when you're promoting it, or when you're putting that on Instagram or Behance or Dribbble or whatever, using eye candy is definitely a good thing. So that's something that you can learn from them. Okay. I cannot pronounce the same. Sorry, you will know your answer, your question. Could you please, with your experience starting an agency, how was your switch from a solo player to the team, and how did you communicate it to your clients? So this is an awesome question, because I was switching a lot, and as a freelancer, I was part of, for instance, ClickFunnels, and the team of ClickFunnels for one and a half year. And even though I was a freelancer, a contractor, it felt like being a part of the team. But back to the original question, like solo player switching to a team. Now, the Senia. Okay, right. Thanks. So basically, what you want to do is the trick here is when you're selling yourself, and I was in there for a lot of time. If you're selling yourself, you need, clients are accustomed to a sort of quality that you can provide, and the level of communication, the quality that you deliver. Now the question there is, will you be able to maintain that quality as a team? So my number one advice is to scale slowly, and so that you can maintain the quality that you deliver as a solo person. Because if you fail to do that, then it's going to be a disappointment. So, and there's actually a technique, like a red flag technique called bait and switch, which some of the companies do. And it means that to win the client, they push the most senior, more star designer, like, hey, this is John, and he worked at Apple, and look at his work and look at his communicational skills. And then when they win the client, then they switch to some juniors and they start working on it. Now, I've been there, and obviously it's very costly to put the most experienced people on it, but you need to balance it out somehow. So my biggest advice, what I learned through my mistakes, is you cannot provide the same quality alone, or sorry, in an agency that you can alone. Maybe it's going to be a different quality. Maybe it's going to be a different kind of communication, but you need to cater for that 100%. Because otherwise you will have two options. One, you always need to jump in to help out and put out the fires. Two, put up with clients saying, yeah, I thought we'd be working with you and we are not so happy about it. So building, an agency and a team is a slow work. Actually, one thing I never did, but this is what I would do if I starting over, is building a relationship with professional freelancers, so we can come up with a team that they don't work for me, they work with me. Okay, but whenever I don't need them, they're not on a payroll. I don't need to pay them all the time. Anyway, move on. There are tons of questions. Oh my God. Okay. All right. So Sabrina says, I recently graduated in UX, My background is mostly in content design. I have no industry experience. I'm specifically applying to UX writing roles. Clap, clap. I have 3 really good relevant projects to show, but is there an ideal way to structure the portfolio section on my website? Content design is not UX writing, but one job advert said content design is an accepted background to apply for that job. So during my projects at work, there were no real UX process. When I was restructuring the pages on the website, I didn't map out the user journey or similar, so I have nothing to show by way of my thinking process. Would you suggest spending time doing it anyway so I have something to add? Yeah, so when it's about content design, UX writing, so if it's about what I call the writing part, so what it's often called like the less sexy part, which is like, documents and writing and process diagrams, then what I like to do is you need to make the presentation sexy. You have a process, you can still lay out your process, even though if it's not the most, spot on or proper process of all. But having like a few infographics showing your process, using a few behind the scene images, and doing great on typography, because if you are with UX writing, you can see a lot of good examples. I mean, I love UX writing because it's such an easy thing to communicate, because you can just use 2 alert messages and a bad one and a good one, and they will understand like, okay, why the bad one is is not performing well, and what's the good in the proper solution. So I would say make it sexy, definitely, for sure. Okay, we have from Tasos. In theory, most of us have an entry point in UX UI by either junior positions or by freelancing. Which one do you think has the most to offer to new upcoming designer? And should someone heavily aim to one, or should we just go by the floor, take whatever comes? So if the question here is really about, by the way, can you guys hear me? Because Sonia, my VA told me that there's some issue with the connection. So can you type it up quickly? Okay, I can hear. All right, thanks. Thank you. So if it's about starting as a freelancer or starting as a designer, I've seen both. I've started as a freelancer. It's easier to get more experience as a junior designer faster if you get hired to a company. So 2 tips here. If you go to the junior route, then what's most important is that you go to a place where you're not a solo designer, because that way you could just be freelancing. So if you're a junior, then get hired and go to a team where there's people you can learn from. It's very important. Like, look at the actual people, like who is going to be like the director of design or the design manager, if there's anything like that. I don't recommend going into a company as a solo designer if you're a junior. While if you're freelancing, starting as a freelancer, then the difficulty there, which I really enjoy, but it's a personality thing as well. You need to start selling things that you don't have a lot of experience with. So it's a story I tell often, which is about UX research, that when I first read and started learning about usability testing and interviews and everything like that, I wanted to have some experience. So what I did is I started selling my existing UI design clients that, hey, I do usability test. And I needed to take that leap and basically, tell my clients that, hey, I offer this as a paid service. And not everyone can do that. I know that, some people are just too nervous. They want to make sure that they don't let anyone down. My thinking was, and if you can do the same mentally, I highly recommend doing that. So if you can do the following, my thought process was, if you give me this opportunity, I will do whatever it takes. I will work 24/7. I'll stay up all night. I'll learn all the books. I will do everything and go above and beyond for that opportunity. So I was not stressing on, oh my God, what if I cannot do it? I was like, all I need is the opportunity. If you can do that, freelancing might be a good way to go. If you want to gain experience, go for the junior position. We have one question from Laura. In relation to describing the process, do you have any specific examples of a good process description? So if it's a UX process, depending on what you use. So if it's the 7-step UX process or design thinking, or it's the double diamond, then you can kind of lay out those steps in your case study. But what I teach inside the course, to give you a little sneak peek, is what I like to call as the pitch part, the case study, and the outcomes. So basically you start with a short pitch section where you really sum up all the learnings and the findings that you learned during the project. So to hook people, to lead them into reading the case study. And then you lay out the case study in a linear fashion, following how the project was carried out. And then on the outcome section, you just reiterate the most important takeaways that you learned during the project. Geo, in any of your UX freelance gigs, were you required to code or motion design? In other words, was your freelance work specific in nature, or did it include it all? UX research, design, wireframing, prototyping. Now, I would say I did everything, meaning there were projects where I was called in to facilitate. So facilitate the kickoff workshops or a design sprint. I did that a lot, facilitating design sprints. But it was all the strategy. They needed my senior expertise for the strategy part. And then they took it and they went with it. In some cases, they started with, we need somebody who can see through the system, build up the architecture and wireframes. We know what we want, and we have designers, UI designers to carry out for it. And there's the full stack gig as well. And in many cases, and this is what I often tell people, that if you can do UI, for instance, but you want to be more like a product designer, many people say no right away to UI work, because that's just only a part of the process. Now, in many cases, I still say yes when people ask me can you just create the UIs? Can you just create the wireframes? I'll say yes. And then what happens, and it happened 2 months ago with a client, they came to me and they said, I'm laughing because they're developers and they're obviously not designers, but they said they're bringing me the wireframes. All I need to do is give my 2 cents on the usability and turn them into UI. And after the first round of them sending wireframes, it turned out that those were Excel files with some instructions of what, it's more like requirements. And at that point, it turned out quickly that, hey, you need me guys to do the wireframing and the prototyping, because these are not wireframes. Obviously, this wasn't how I laid it out for them, but it started with UI, and I was kind of expecting this situation to happen. So don't say no straight away. The coding part, I never sold coding. I know a little bit HTML and JavaScript. Motion design, I love that. I don't do motion design. In some cases, when I needed to design some interactions, I learned some bits. But for instance, motion design is really out of my territory. Okay, Sabrina, how do you know? Sorry, lost track. How do you know how much to charge a client when you first start freelancing? Okay, that would be the $1 million question. But I'll answer it anyways. It's very simple. However amount you want to charge. So just to answer it properly, what I would advise is set some targets. What's your burn rate? How much money goes out every month? Calculate that, and then come up with how many hours can you work in a week? And maybe it's a side, it works for full time, but it works for a side project as well. I was mentoring people who had like a part-time or full-time job, and they wanted to do UX as freelancing. And what we did, we calculated the burn rate, like what's their goal, how much money they want to make each month. And then we've reverse engineered and say, okay, how much can you work in a week? How much you need to bill in terms of hours? And then you just divide it, and that gives you an hourly rate, basically. And from there, I don't want to go into it, but there's all kinds of ways you can charge them in an hourly, daily basis, weekly basis. They all have pros and cons. But to give you a reference point, do the math, do the, like, how much money you want to make, and do the burn rate calculation. And that will leave you with a good hourly rate to get started. Do you recommend, Carolina, do you recommend having a blog in addition to the portfolio? Excellent question. Yes. Or have something other, like you can have a podcast, you can have YouTube videos. I've seen many, many designers on Instagram who are very successful getting new clients by being active there. So sharing like carousels and showing like insights of how they work. And if a client like comes in their way, they can actually see like, okay, this is how he or she works. This is a lot of examples that she produced. And what's interesting there is so being active on social media. For instance, I realized that me being there on Instagram is less about the social media. It's really heavy lifting content creation. So I spend more time creating Instagram carousels, educating folks, than my podcast, because I record my podcast in an hour. I got my dad who works for me as a UX designer, which is a fun fact. We work together. I run under his name, the same name, Csaba Házi. He has just a mustache. That's the only difference. Anyway, so he can edit it for me, and VA, my VA Sonia can also help me out with that. But heavy lifting the Instagram content creation. But back to the topic, creating a blog, excellent. Post it on LinkedIn as well, or post it on Medium. It works really, really well as well. But if you're good on camera, why not create a YouTube channel? Or you can do a podcast. I'm an avid fan of listening to podcasts because it's more intimate and you can pass on a lot more knowledge. So doing content creation is definitely good. Just make sure you stay very consistent. We have we have Kamran. What should you list your role as if it was a solo project? I mean, I just showed you the example. That was a solo project. I listed out everything. I did the strategy, I did the UI, I did the UX, I did the whole thing. And that's fine. You don't need to, appear as a team if you are not. Many people realize it's much more efficient to work with a professional than with a team, because with the agency, they have more resources, but in many cases, you don't get the dedicated attention like you get working with a freelance professional. Julia Parker, I'm halfway with my BA in UX and I wonder, except good grades and good portfolio, what else should I start focusing on to land a job after graduating? What other things do recruiters look for in a junior UX junior designer? Okay, this is a great question. So if you are already, doing good grades, that's awesome. Definitely thumbs up for you. And if you're working on your portfolio, excellent. Now, I would say get projects. That's, even if you're starting out, if you're still studying, you can start freelancing. You don't need to if you don't need to get a full-time job, you can start freelancing on the side, getting experience. Because to be honest, this whole industry is all about experience and being able to showcase that experience. So start selling your services. You don't need to wait until you graduate. I don't have a degree in UX. When I started out, I couldn't even have a degree in UX because there were no training around this, especially in Hungary. So you don't need to wait, and that's my number one advice, because the more experience you have, the better portfolio you will have, and the more chances you will have to get hired, and you will build and network. And if you feel up for it, going into content creation, that's also a good thing you can do. Karina, what's your advice and recommendation on documenting your project process? Often I forget to take pictures, screenshots, and sometimes forget how did I get from that point to this point. Now, with the last one, how you get from this point to that one, sit down and think about it. So that's why it's important to have a dedicated attention to the portfolio. I rushed my portfolio many times. Like, a client asked for an up-to-date portfolio. I didn't have that, so I stayed up until dawn and I was just putting together something and obviously in that case, things like that won't come to mind. So much better way to do that is to take the time and think about it. Now, just reflecting on that, and you can too, I also start documenting, taking screenshots, taking selfies with the clients that I can use as like behind the scene photos. And in many cases, you can also recreate some of them. So just think about this. Pull up your laptop, put a coffee next to it, screenshot, behind the scene photo. Who will tell that it wasn't taken in that part? Obviously, you won't be able to capture a photo with a client, but you don't need lots, but definitely these things definitely make it more personal. And just think about it in an ongoing basis. And the next portfolio is going to be better, and we'll have more of these materials. Akash, if the company asking for more than 2+ years of experience, can we get to the company by showing a great portfolio? Yes. I think that don't be intimidated if you see that there's some hard requirement, like a degree or X+ years of experience. In my experience, it's all about, does the client like you, your experience? Does the client trust your judgment? It's all about trust. The reason why they put that 2+ in there is because they want somebody who has some experience, and that way they can trust them. So I would say, yes, definitely. A great portfolio overrides a lot of rules. Now, on the other hand, don't be turned off, like never be turned off if you see a hard requirement. That still apply, because maybe you have a connection, maybe you can have your foot in the door somehow, or maybe you just apply, from the street, as how we call it in Hungary, and you still have a shot with a strong portfolio. Shanna, wanting to show more projects. What if you're a graphic designer, interior designer with 15+ years of experience? Awesome, kudos to you. And you want to include other types of work in your portfolio other than the UX UI. All right. Now this is very important here. It was so important, I took a break drinking this. If you do multiple things, then you shouldn't staff that into the same portfolio, because it's going to dilute it. It's the same principle as not showing like 10, 15 projects. Too much to process. Now, if you do UX and branding and motion design and everything, now, in some cases, some people can get away with it. But in that case, this would be my recommendation. In your website, have them like list them out. Like, I do this, I do that as well. But then have separate dedicated pages and PDFs and slide decks. That's why I'm teaching that in my course. Because if you do multiple things, you need those dedicated portfolios. I would never have won those clients that I won if I've put in everything in my portfolio. Like, I do education, I do workshops, I do UI, I do UX, I do coding, I do whatever that is. So maybe if you list it out in your web page, it's okay, but be sure that whenever you send something to a client or to a recruiter, then make sure it's tailored, because you will have a lot more chances of getting hired or getting the project. Sabrina, if I'm not applying for a design role though, and instead it is UX writing specifically, does that design of my portfolio then matter as much? I have a great eye for design already, but it won't blow anyone away. I think I touched on this point already. Yes, definitely. Make sure it looks awesome. It can be minimalistic. You don't need any, all the bells and whistles, as they say. You just need something that looks great, with the process, with the behind the scenes, and with some clever examples for UX writing. You can really make this stand out. If you remember the portfolio of Matt Lipinski I showed you, that's really simple. That's really clean. It's like nice typography, some nice images. You can totally do that for UX writing as well. We have a question from Julie Parker. Another question. Often I see that many UXers have their portfolio designed the same way, typically with a hello, my name is. And I wonder how would you design it to stand out and the template doesn't look cliche? Now, there's two things, or three. One, that part of the, hello, my name is, I don't think that's a good thing, and that's why I'm teaching in my course developing your elevator pitch, which the elevator pitch is like who you are, who you're helping with your services, and what do you help them gain by your services, because that's what will make you stand out. Saying, hey, I'm Julie, I'm a UX designer based in Chicago, and I love solving problems. This would be true for the 2 million other UX designers as well. So you need your niche, you need your orientation, you need your specialty, you need your target audience, all wrapped up in a nice pitch. Now, about the rest, it's not a big issue. So if your pitch looks beautiful, but the theme is like, hey, there's a picture of yourself, a pitch, companies you work with, portfolio, projects, it's going to be a portfolio page, whatever you do. You can spice it up. And there are some very good examples of breaking some patterns so it doesn't look so boring. And you can do a lot by applying some great visual design. But also, on the other hand, like try to stand out. But on the other hand, I also like focus more on the content. Have a nice visuality, but focus on the content, because that's what it's going to sell you. If you have an awesome visual design, but your content is not so strong, if you want to do UX, you won't have a good shot. All right. So, Laura, how can we stand out in our case study case without going through the research ideate prototype? Very simple. Just do something like, here's where we started, challenge problems. Here was our solution. And this was the result that we ended up with. Even if you didn't use the double diamond, the whole like design thinking or the 7-step UX, it's not an issue. The case study is a journey from where you started, the problems, the challenges, the frustrations of the users, the frustrations of the client, through how you solved it and where you landed. It doesn't need to be the research idea prototype. We have a question from Urvi. How do you understand who do you want to work? How do you understand who do you want to work for when you don't have any work experience? In such cases, how should we approach this question? Okay, that's an excellent question as well. So obviously, a lot of things that I teach in my course are also good, so are very good for junior designers. But there are also things that you need to carry with yourself for your next portfolio and the next portfolio, and when you're a meteor and when you're a senior. And there will be a lot of things that maybe are open to you. For instance, like what industries you enjoy working with, or what are the red flags. Maybe you don't know a lot of the red flags. I'm basically telling in my course some of the red flags that you need to be looking for. But other than that, this is something that you will learn along the way. So again, it's like minimum viable product. You need to start somewhere. Have your initial assumptions and have your initial, things that you like and you don't like. And it's not going to be much, but you will learn that this is something you need to pay attention to. And maybe that's even more important than, the actual takeaways. The most important thing is that you understand that this is something that you actively need to monitor. You need to know who you're working with. You need to watch out for the red flags. Next question from Olkar. I'm a graphics and UX UI designer, and I'm still unemployed. In my portfolio, I shared only 3 graphics work. I want to add UX works too. I'll do this at ASAP, but then how do I find freelance work? Can you tell something about how to get into freelance work, and how do I set the price for designs? So if you want to, start freelancing, I would advise stay away from freelancing platforms like freelance.com or Upwork or anything like that, because they are just about the mass production and lowest price possible. So if you wanted to get into freelancing, it's not going to happen overnight. So it's going to be a longer process while you're, you get those clients. But what you can do, for instance, you can do direct sales, learning how to reach out to companies. I've had very much success with cold emailing in the past, and very few people were like getting back to me like, hey, I don't like you, don't email me, whatever. So you can do cold emailing. You can start social media activity like on Instagram, create content. That's a nice way to start attracting some business and some momentum, and building your network. That's huge. You need to build your network, go to events, go to meetups, get yourself introduced. And if you do that consistently, you will experience success. All right. Luya, if a project is quite large, would it make sense to present it in sections in a portfolio? For example, one project is about workshops and the other one is about the user research methods based on the same project, with the purpose of having everything at glance for recruiters without having to scroll or find a specific section. That's actually a great idea, and I love you use your UX brain to do this. So in this case, what I recommend is maybe you can break it up into separate pages, or you can say that you have these sections, so like a shorter case study, but there's like kind of a learn more. You can expand it, or it takes you to a different page. I really like that because basically you don't need to be worried about putting too much content there. But on the other hand, you need to make the content smart in a sense of you need to provide something at glance like you write it. I think you are on the right track with this, that it needs to be accessible for people who just want the gist of it, and for people who really want those details of how you did that, show me that, I want to learn more. Fun question from Sabrina. I have a question, it's random, but do you think Hungarian businesses are behind in UX and need to look into hiring more UX consultants? I have come across some really terrible websites when I was looking for wedding venues and suppliers, and some of them looked like they were made in the 1990s, haha. Yeah. I can agree. I think the UX space is growing in Hungary, and people, I mean, when I started out, people don't know what UX was. So I had to explain it to them. Now I don't need to explain it because they know exactly what it is, or at least they think they know what it is. But obviously the wedding venues is kind of a small medium business. And I guess there's still a lot of like way to go in that space as well. So there are some good examples, but there's a lot of bad examples. One of my favorites that I actually pointed out on a resource section is the website of the MÁV, the train. The train company, and their buying a ticket there was just awful, and the participant that I did the user test with failed on every attempt. So anyway, yeah, thanks for asking that. We have a question from Theodora. Our portfolio should be a PDF or a website. Does it matter? It does matter. It needs to be both. You need a website because that's always there and works for you 24/7, but you need a PDF because you can tailor the PDF when you send it to specific clients. It's much more powerful. Check out the episode I did with Teresa Schaffer. She's a black belt UX recruiter, now partner at an HR firm. And she said that she loves getting PDFs because then it features just the projects that are relevant to that client and that position. So it's really, really powerful. And in addition to that, I'll teach creating a slide deck and how you can use a slide deck portfolio when presenting to clients in my course. Carolina, how could a junior top a senior designer? Because although the employee offers want an experienced designer, does the same situation occur when you're a junior freelancer? This is an interesting question. I would say, yeah, with the freelancing is very different, because with the freelancing is all about answering the question, can you solve the problem for me? Can you provide those outcomes that I'm looking for? For instance, if you're a junior designer, don't say you're a junior designer if you're freelancing. I'm not saying you need to say you're an expert designer, but junior designer only makes sense in an employment point of view. Because if you say you're a junior designer, then if I'm at a company and I'm hiring you, then I know that, okay, you need mentoring. But if I'm a client, I won't be able to provide mentoring. So if you say junior, I'm going like, what? What do you mean? Like, what makes you junior? So I don't advise to lie, of course, but I would say, like, say you're a designer, say you are a UX designer. It doesn't make sense anyways. And that's why I wouldn't say I'm a senior designer to a freelance client, because again, it's like the number of years doesn't count towards getting hired as much, because it's always about the quality that you can deliver. So you can definitely top, so to speak, senior designers. If you're going freelancing, it's all about, can you relate to the client's problems? Can you solve those problems? Can you sell that you can solve those problems? I know many senior designers, they wouldn't have a chance as freelancers because they cannot sell themselves. And I know tons of junior people, and the way they progress really fast is because they can sell themselves. They can sell their services to clients, and that gives them projects to work on, and that gives them space to improve. Sabrina, what's a great way to write your personal statement on your CV when applying for a UX role if you don't have UX experience? Well, okay, this is a tough one. Personal statement, if you mean like your positioning, then I would say in that case, you need to be very clear on what you can bring to the table. So I've seen companies hiring people with kind of, okay, good background, but maybe not a lot of UX knowledge, maybe have the UI knowledge, and they want to apply for a UX intern position. In that case, if you're a mismatch, so to speak, then you need to really hone in on what's the value you can deliver to the company. And to my agency, I hired 2 or 3 people that were not a good fit, but they had the potential. And how I knew they had the potential is that when we were doing a task and we were sitting down, they could like convince me with the way they they provided me value in a way like, okay, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to be of value, and you can try me out. So being a little bit of entrepreneurial and having the entrepreneurial mindset definitely helps to bridge that gap of the lack of experience. So I would say that if you have this gap of not having enough experience, go all in on being helpful and say, I will do twice as much as that junior. I mean, don't point fingers, of course, but I would do twice as much because I want it so bad. But to that, you need to know the company, you need to know the people, you need to form some personal connections, and that way it will turn out really well. All right, Magdalena, what program for designing UI and UX is best? InVision, Sketch, or Figma? This is going to be a short one. Figma. Forget about rest. I transitioned from Sketch to Figma a few years ago. I really feel that Figma is the best all around tool for doing UX work. And it's the fastest like evolving product as well. They're just constantly amaze me the amount of releases they do. I love Sketch, and way back then I was like exciting, oh, new Sketch version. But then, it wasn't that much of a progress from one release to another. While with Figma, they blown me away with their updates in the past year. Okay. Anyway, forget InVision. It's a dying and collapsing star. There are a few articles if you're interested, like what's happening with InVision, because there used to be kind of the category kings way back then. Okay, from Cassia, should we approach an employer that we're interested? Sorry, should we approach an employer that we were interested in when we feel ready with a portfolio, even they aren't actually looking for a new position, be it UI, UX, multidisciplinary designer? Yes. You never know if they're looking for designers or not. In many cases, they might be looking for designers, but they don't have it on their career sites. So definitely that's something that's, it's good to be on the radar. I also had clients where we touch base and they were like, hey, it's very interesting. You're very cool. Your portfolio looks really nice. Let's just exchange contacts. Who knows what will come up? So going out, building your network is definitely something that you should do. And don't be afraid of approaching companies. When from the company's perspective, you would think it's very easy to get the proper candidate. That's the opposite is true. Even though that, you might feel that you're applying to multiple companies and you don't get results. The companies it's very hard to fill in positions and then to keep people and then to find people for the right position. So if you're on the radar, when the opportunity arises, they will call you. And so that's a good technique, basically. Russia, is there any demo video for the course? I wanted to do that. I didn't do that. I didn't have the time. I wanted to do this webinar instead. So no, unfortunately, I don't have the video, but I will create one. Maybe for the next week, I will have a little sneak peek and just a walkthrough of the lessons and all that. Good idea, and thanks for bringing it up. Jessica, what are some websites that you recommend to start creating an online portfolio? It depends. My recommendation is to always go with something that can scale with you. Let it be, so don't do a portfolio only website like UXfolio or anything like that. It's better to go with something that can scale with you, especially if you're into freelancing. If you want to blog later, if you want to do courses maybe later, or write an ebook, or so if you're interested in that, then definitely, or just sell services as a UX professional, then definitely go with a website builder platform, like Wix or Squarespace, and whatever that has the ability to grow with you when you need it. Shayna, will you share your personal portfolio with us? Well, not now because we don't have the time, and we're running a little bit late. But I will do some portfolio reviews, and I will show you bits of my portfolio as well. You can find my TopTal portfolio, by the way, if you Google my name and TopTal, and you can check it out. It's on the internet. So maybe next time. We have a question from Z. What platform do you recommend to make a portfolio website? We just answered that just a second ago. Can InVision board serve as a portfolio website? Yes, but I don't recommend it. Basically, a portfolio needs to be a website. A website portfolio works better because it's not just the designs. It's about your elevator pitch. It's about your service offerings. It's about who you are and what you do and what how you help your clients. So that's why I say that don't go with anything like, don't create a portfolio with Figma or Notion or anything like that. Like, that's not a website, because the website can grow with you. You can add an appointment booking later on. If you come up with a workshop idea, you can sell a workshop as a product or as a service through a sales funnel. or if you write a little ebook, you can even for free or for paid, and you can all do that with a website. But you cannot do that with with something like UXfolio or InVision boards or anything like that. So it's going to be very, very, very limited what you can do with those projects. All right, that's the end of the questions. I hope I answered all of you guys' questions. Thank you so much for being here. It was really a pleasure. And like I said, this replay is going to be available for you to rewatch tomorrow. And yeah, stay tuned. Check out the course. I would love to see you inside. And other than that, have a wonderful day and see you around next time.